It's no accident that this meeting is being held in front of the American Embassy today, because the 26th of June is the date which in the late 1990s the United Nations declared to be the International Day, an annual day for human rights and against torture and against extraordinary rendition. So today is a very important day. It's also worth reminding ourselves in terms of the United Nations that it's now 60 years since the UN Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. That, of course, was enacted in San Francisco. And where are we? Outside the American Embassy. Fortress America, right behind us. And I'm also a member of the Shaker Aamer campaign in Battersea. And the American Embassy is proposing to move to Battersea. And we don't want an armed American camp in Battersea. As we stand here, you look at this blockhouse behind us, the armed might of America with police with submachine guns, no more than 50 feet from where we are. We welcome peaceful Americans to Battersea. They won't be talking about this meeting here, but various groups united together, calling for freedom, peace and justice, calling for an end to the foreign wars, calling for the money to be spent on the people of Britain. They won't be publicising that tonight. They'll be talking about the armed forces and the glorification of armed might. The Stop the War coalition is absolutely clear. We want the troops to come home. We don't want British lives, young men and women being lost in Afghanistan at the moment. 307 have died, the latest count this week. 2/3 of them have been in the last couple of years. And of course that says nothing about the tens of thousands of Afghanis who've been killed. The decimation and destruction of villages and the destruction of lives. If we want to spend money in Afghanistan, spend it on digging wells in the villages, build the clinics in the villages, build the primary schools. That's the sort of money to spend on the people of Afghanistan, not on reinforcing the military. The Stop the War coalition says cut the wars and don't cut the services. Cut the wars internationally, bring the troops home from Afghanistan. We're here today to publicise the case of the prisoners in Guantánamo, to call for the end of extraordinary rendition, to call for the release of Shaker Aamer. But it's in the context of an American policy, which is a policy designed to maintain domination of the whole of the Middle Eastern region. Interestingly, they've actually got real problems now, as we know. You know, Stanley McChrystal was replaced the other day by General Petraeus, and Stanley McChrystal was starting to do some sort of softly approach, not to bomb the villages, to try and get the support of the local people. That clearly has not been working. Petraeus apparently has already called for another 10,000 extra troops to go in on top of where they are. Recently, in front of an American Senate committee, General Petraeus said, with Israel's behaviour now in the Middle East, this creates additional problems for the United States. And of course it does, because he was referring to the Israeli attack on the Gaza flotilla, the attempt to bring aid and support to the imprisoned people of Gaza, the largest prison camp in the world, 1.5 million people in an open prison camp. And for American policy, Israel's behaviour and political positioning is so unacceptable. To call the 9 Turkish aid supporters who they executed on that ship as Muslim extremists is unspeakable. It's unacceptable, and the whole world knows it. And even the American rulers now are having to accept that they've got problems with Israel. But their policy isn't just failing with Israel, it's also failing in Pakistan. You know, the occupations and the interventions are leading to more problems and more trouble. Civil war developing in Pakistan. Look at the issues going on between Uzbeks and Kyrgyz now on the borders of Afghanistan. Their policy is failing. The neoconservative politics of domination and attempted regional domination in support of their oil and gas pipelines is certainly failing. So we are against, as a previous speaker said, this is not a war on terror, it's a war of terror. And certainly as an activist in the Shaker Aamer campaign, I want to reinforce that point. It's terror against Shaker, it's terror against his family. His family live in Battersea, and his family are good members of the community there, have worked with the Shaker Aamer campaign and the Stop the War coalition around these issues. We've had petitions to Downing Street. Recently, even the new Tory MP for Battersea stood outside number 10 Downing Street with the Shaker Aamer campaign to deliver a letter to David Cameron. You know, the pressure is mounting. Shaker Aamer is an innocent man. He's been in Guantánamo for 8 years now, since the beginning of 2002. He was captured with Mozambique in Afghanistan, and he was sold by poor rural people. When you're absolutely impoverished and living on the breadline, and when there are leaflets going out saying if you've got any informants, we'll give you $500 or whatever the sum was. The poor farmers captured so many innocent people and sold them to the Americans. Shaker Aamer now is an innocent man in Guantánamo. He's never been charged with anything. He's never been tried. I'll tell you what his crime is.
They were kidnapped. They were abducted. Taken and sold for a bounty. And then their torture began. And the torture memos state the methods of torture to be used in the standard operating procedure. 18 of them. All of them crimes against humanity. All of them war crimes. All of them against the Article 3 of the Convention Against Torture. All of them against the Geneva Conventions. All of them even against the US Constitution. It's a total disgrace, and our government, shame on them. Shame on them. They knew what was happening. Our government have done nothing. They haven't condemned the torture, and we must hold them responsible. Those that perpetrated the torture must be held to account. They are war crimes.